The galaxy had always underestimated humanity, dismissing Earth as a backwater planet of primitive, fragile creatures who could barely reach the stars. Yet here they were, orbiting the fringes of the Luminara expanse, where the Council of 12 Empires had ruled unchallenged for millennia, confident in their superiority, their fleet stretching light-years, bristling with weapons that made entire worlds tremble. And yet humanity persisted quietly, building not just ships and weapons, but networks of intelligence, alliances with minor species who had been oppressed, and technologies so subtle that even the most advanced alien minds could not detect them until it was too late, on the day that the starport on Erythia Prime was overrun by the Drellin Armada. Humans appeared not as fleeing prey, but as coordinated strategists, their ships weaving through space like living organisms, dodging plasma storms, evading drone swarms, and launching countermeasures that seemed impossible to those who believed nothing on Earth could threaten them. Captain Elena Rios, veteran of the Terran fleet, stared at the holographic display showing hundreds of enemy vessels converging, her hands moving over the controls with the calm precision of someone who had spent years studying not just human tactics but alien psychology, understanding that arrogance was the deadliest weapon the galaxy wielded against itself. And as her voice cut through the comms, simple, direct, the words carrying the weight of humanity's hidden fire, she ordered maneuvers that no one expected, guiding her fleet into positions that the Drellins thought were impossible, and with every calculated strike, alien minds began to grasp that they had misread the humans entirely, that their arrogance had blinded them to the quiet, relentless ingenuity that had built Terra into a civilization capable of surviving annihilation and turning the tables in a heartbeat. And yet this was only the beginning, as behind the front lines, scientists on orbital stations activated technologies that had lain dormant for decades, weapons capable of collapsing matter, energy systems that bent physics in ways the galaxy had never considered, all under the guise of peaceful research. And while the Drellin admirals scrambled to respond, issuing commands in panic, human diplomats reached out to smaller systems, rallying those who had long been oppressed, showing them that humanity's power was not just in their machines but in their willingness to fight for what was right, that morality and strategy could coexist and form a force no empire could anticipate. And as the first wave of the Terran counterstrike hit, entire squadrons of alien warships were shredded before they could even fire, the galaxy beginning to realize that these humans, who had been underestimated for so long, had evolved not only to survive but to dominate, not through blind aggression but through cunning, resilience, and a unity that no alien race had ever achieved. And as the Council of 12 convened in emergency, their chambers filled with fear and disbelief, reports flooding into planets liberated, fleets destroyed, communications hijacked, and yet humanity maintained a level of discipline that prevented unnecessary destruction, for their fight was not conquest but a demonstration of capability, a message that the galaxy would not ignore. Humans were not to be underestimated, that even a civilization appearing small and insignificant could defy the expectations of those who claimed absolute superiority. And in the heart of the Terran Command Hub, Elena Rios finally allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction, knowing that the real test was only beginning, that the galaxy would push back, attempt to regroup, but that humanity had already crossed a threshold, awakening not only to the full extent of their technological and strategic genius, but to the truth that the universe itself could be challenged, defied, and reshaped by those who refused to accept the limits imposed on them. And so the stars shone differently that night, witness to the first chapter of a war the galaxy had thought would be one-sided, a war that now carried the unmistakable signature of humanity's determination, audacity, and the unyielding belief that they could stand against empires and emerge victorious. And somewhere deep in the void, alien leaders who had once laughed at the idea of humans now stared at their holograms in horror, realizing that they had triggered a force far beyond their comprehension, a force that would not rest until the galaxy had acknowledged the true place of humanity within it. And as systems lit up with human fleet movements, coordinated strikes, and the careful rescue of planets caught in the crossfire, it became abundantly clear that this was more than rebellion or retaliation. It was the emergence of a species that would redefine what it meant to rule, survive, and endure among the stars. And the Drellins, the most arrogant of them all, could only watch in disbelief as humanity, underestimated, dismissed, and mocked, demonstrated that defiance was not chaos but precision, that courage was not recklessness but strategy, and that the galaxy itself had miscalculated the quietest, most powerful species it had ever encountered. The aftermath of the first engagements left the Drellin fleets in disarray. Their command structures fractured as reports of annihilated vessels streamed in from every contested sector, and while panic rippled through the Empire, humanity's forces moved with relentless precision, the Terran High Command coordinating multiple operations simultaneously, ensuring that every maneuver, every engagement, and every communication was synchronized across light years and within the Drellin capital. Supreme Admiral Valen struggled to comprehend how a species they had dismissed as primitive could anticipate and counter every strategy, every trap. With such foresight, their vessels striking not just with brute force but with subtlety, exploiting weaknesses in alien ship designs that no intelligence service had ever recorded, while human engineers, stationed on orbital shipyards and hidden research facilities, worked tirelessly to adapt alien technologies, reverse engineering energy cores, and shielding systems in days what alien scientists had taken decades to develop. And the psychological impact of these achievements rippled through the smaller empires as well, many of whom had been watching the conflict from neutral positions, unsure whether to intervene or remain passive, only to realize that the humans had not just survived. They had forced the Drellins to reveal vulnerabilities the galaxy had long assumed non-existent. And on frontier worlds, ordinary civilians marveled as Terran vessels arrived to evacuate colonies previously abandoned, not with empty promises but with disciplined, flawless execution, showing that humanity's combination of compassion and tactical genius made them an unpredictable force. And while political leaders across multiple star systems convened secret councils to assess the threat, human diplomats moved with equal swiftness, sending envoys to oppressed species, offering protection, treaties, and inclusion in the growing coalition, demonstrating that strength and morality were not mutually exclusive. And as fleets of hybrid forces began to take shape, composed of humans and newly liberated allies, the Drellin Empire found itself outmaneuvered on every front, struggling to regroup, while Captain Elena Rios, aboard the flagship Vanguard, plotted the next phase of operations with a focus that bordered on obsessive, analyzing alien communication patterns, predicting fleet movements, and coordinating attacks that neutralized threats before they materialized, all the while reminding her officers that victory was not achieved through destruction alone but through careful demonstration of humanity's capabilities. And in laboratories far from the front lines, scientists activated planetary-scale defense systems, orbiting stations capable of bending gravitational fields to incapacitate warships, energy arrays that could disable entire fleets with precision, and stealth technologies that rendered ships effectively invisible to the galaxy's most advanced sensors, each breakthrough further amplifying the strategic advantage humans already wielded. And as word of these feats reached the outer systems, morale among human forces soared while alien populations began to question the narratives fed to them by their leaders. And in secret communications, minor empires debated whether to ally with humanity or attempt to suppress them, recognizing that the stakes had shifted irrevocably, for no longer could the galaxy assume humans were a manageable, predictable species. And within the chaos of these unfolding events, small bands of elite human operatives carried out missions that crippled supply lines, disrupted command chains, and liberated key installations, turning what the Drellins believed to be simple skirmishes into decisive victories that reshaped entire sectors. And while some human soldiers lamented the necessity of conflict, others embraced it as an opportunity to demonstrate what humanity was capable of when united by purpose and belief. And as Admiral Valen convened emergency war councils, desperate to reassert control, he could feel the tide turning irrevocably, the arrogance that had once defined his empire now a liability. For every misstep invited another strategic blow, every hesitation allowed humans to consolidate power and rally allies. And the galaxy began to see that humanity's defiance was not reckless chaos, but a calculated, relentless assertion of strength, intelligence, and moral authority. And as the first signs of coordinated human-alien coalition fleets appeared along critical hyperlanes, the Drellins understood that they were facing a force that could not simply be destroyed. They had to be comprehended, contained, or risk total collapse. And on Earth, in the halls of the Terran Council, leaders celebrated not with triumphalist fanfare but with solemn recognition that their species had crossed a threshold, that the galaxy had awakened to humanity capable of reshaping the balance of power. And somewhere in the darkness of space, alien strategists could only stare at the holographic projections of human movements, realizing that every assumption they had made about Earth, every prediction about human behavior, had been catastrophically wrong, and that defiance, courage and ingenuity were not weaknesses but weapons, and humanity, underestimated for centuries, had now become the galaxy's most unpredictable and formidable force, a force that would not rest until the message was unmistakably clear. The era of dismissing humans was over, and the consequences of that miscalculation would echo across the stars for generations. The human offensive continued with relentless momentum as fleets moved through contested sectors like a living tide, striking at points the Drellans had assumed secure, and each engagement revealed not just raw power but the depth of human strategy, the ability to anticipate multiple layers of enemy response and manipulate it to their advantage, while at the same time, the Terran scientists introduced new technologies into the conflict that seemed almost magical to alien eyes, from adaptive shielding that reconfigured in real time to weapons that targeted structural weaknesses in ships based on patterns the humans had observed from orbital reconnaissance. And as smaller empires watched these developments, many began to reconsider their neutrality, some seeking alliances, others covertly supplying humans with intelligence that could turn the tide, while Captain Elena Rios coordinated multi-system campaigns, her voice calm yet commanding over encrypted comms, directing forces in complex maneuvers across thousands of light-years with precision that made the galaxy's oldest commanders question whether humans were bound by the same limitations as other species. And beneath the surface, on planets thought abandoned or insignificant, human operatives sabotaged hypergates, intercepted communications, and disrupted logistics, turning what had been conventional battlefronts into labyrinths of confusion for the Drellans, forcing them to commit resources they could ill afford, and revealing the strategic depth humans had cultivated over decades of observation and preparation, while civilians and allied and liberated systems found themselves protected by human forces, experiencing a combination of relief and awe as the Terran fleets arrived not merely to destroy but to secure, stabilize, and integrate systems previously left to suffer under Imperial neglect. And throughout all this, alien leaders convened in increasingly frantic councils, unable to comprehend how species they had once dismissed as insignificant could operate with such cohesion, adaptability, and tactical ingenuity, with every intercepted transmission from the front lines confirming that humans were not only capable of fighting the Drellans on equal footing, but were systematically dismantling their infrastructure, exploiting weaknesses, and establishing networks of control that extended influence far beyond what any empire had anticipated. And amid this chaos, human diplomats reached out to long-oppressed species, offering cooperation, protection, and inclusion in a growing coalition, demonstrating that humanity's power was not merely destructive but constructive, fostering loyalty, admiration, and unity among those who had suffered under the yoke of galactic overlords, while the Drellans struggled to respond, their pride and hubris now liabilities, as every attempt to regroup was anticipated, countered, and nullified with surgical precision. And on the Terran flagship, Rios convened her senior officers to plan the next phase of the campaign, emphasizing restraint, precision, and the importance of demonstrating humanity's superiority not through mindless aggression but through calculated, relentless defiance, as they prepared for an unprecedented maneuver to cut through the heart of the Drellan supply chain and communications network, a plan that would require extraordinary coordination across multiple fleets and allied systems, while the psychological impact of these operations began to ripple through the wider galaxy, alien populations witnessing humans as protectors, tacticians, and saviors, yet simultaneously as an unstoppable military force that had rewritten the rules of engagement, forcing the Council of 12 and their allies to acknowledge for the first time that their assumptions about Earth, about humanity's capabilities, and about the limits of their own power had been catastrophically flawed. And in the midst of battle, as fleets clashed across hyperspace corridors, human pilots demonstrated a combination of daring, intuition, and discipline that was unmatched, their actions turning potential disasters into decisive victories, while orbital command centers transmitted real-time updates to systems across the coalition, ensuring that every strike, every defensive maneuver, and every rescue operation reinforced a growing narrative that humans were not just defying the galaxy, they were rewriting it, and with every victory, with every liberated system, with every failed attempt by the Drellans to respond, the galaxy began to realize that humanity's defiance was more than rebellion or resistance. It was a calculated, intelligent assertion of power, morality, and strategy, a message that no empire could ignore. And as the stars themselves bore witness to the scale of human operations, Alien leaders could only watch in disbelief as their centuries of assumptions collapsed under the weight of human ingenuity, courage, and relentless defiance. And the Terran Council, observing the campaign's progression, recognized that their species had entered a new era, one where they were no longer the underestimated underdogs or the architects of a new galactic order. And even as the Drellans frantically attempted to regroup, humanity's momentum was unstoppable, a tide of innovation, unity, and defiance that would carry them across systems, through conflicts, and into the hearts of empires that had long believed themselves untouchable, proving once and for all that the galaxy had misjudged humanity, and that defiance, strategy, and unyielding resolve were forces no empire could contain. Humanity's expansion across contested sectors continued with an almost surgical precision, as every engagement, every operation, and every maneuver seemed preordained yet fluid, responding instantly to the unpredictable actions of the Drellans and other empires that had begun to take notice, while at the same time, human scientists and engineers deployed technologies that blurred the line between science and strategy, from adaptive energy shields capable of redirecting entire salvos of plasma, to hyper-accelerated computation systems that allowed fleets to anticipate enemy decisions before they were made. And within the heart of human-controlled space, Captain Elena Rios oversaw simultaneous campaigns across multiple fronts, coordinating fleet movements, planetary defenses, and covert operations with a level of strategic foresight that alien commanders had long assumed impossible for a species so recently emerged into the galactic arena, while the Drellans and their allies scrambled to respond, attempting to consolidate power, shore up supply lines, and rally fleets for counterattacks, only to find that humanity had anticipated every contingency, that their communication networks had been intercepted, their hyperlanes surveyed, and their forces systematically undermined, and as human operatives liberated worlds previously held under oppressive regimes, they not only neutralized hostile forces but also restored infrastructure, established governance, and provided protection for civilians, demonstrating a combination of military might and ethical responsibility that alien civilizations found simultaneously confounding and threatening. And across the galaxy, minor empires began to reach out, offering intelligence, resources, and alliances, recognizing that humanity's rise was not merely a military phenomenon but a shift in the balance of power and moral authority. While within the Terran flagship, Rios analyzed intelligence reports showing the systematic unraveling of Drellan's strategy, noting that each victory was not random but part of an intricate pattern of operations designed to weaken enemy cohesion, morale, and command capabilities without unnecessary destruction. And as fleets moved through contested space, human pilots executed daring maneuvers that combined intuitive instinct with computational precision, striking at key points with devastating effect, while orbital command stations transmitted real-time updates to allied systems, ensuring coordination that spanned thousands of light-years. And throughout all of this, human diplomat continued to engage with oppressed species, extending offers of protection and inclusion, slowly but surely building a coalition that not only supported the war effort but also solidified humanity's reputation as a strategic, moral, and unstoppable force. And as the Drellans attempted increasingly desperate measures, from orbital bombardments to concentrated fleet assaults, they found themselves repeatedly outmaneuvered, their arrogance and overconfidence turning into fatal liabilities, while internally, alien scientists struggled to comprehend the adaptive technologies humans deployed, their attempt to reverse-engineer Terran innovations failing at every turn, further tipping the scales in humanity's favor. And as battles raged across multiple sectors, human strategists continuously evaluated outcomes, refining approaches, learning from each engagement, and integrating new allies and technologies into a dynamic, evolving war machine that became increasingly difficult for any enemy to predict or counter. While on the political front, human leaders coordinated diplomatic channels, reassuring allies, intimidating hesitant empires, and ensuring that the narrative of human superiority, strategic genius, and moral authority spread faster than fleets could move. And with every liberated system, every successful engagement, and every disruption of Drellan command infrastructure, the galaxy's perception of humanity shifted from underestimated primitive species to the most formidable and organized force it had ever encountered. And within the chaos of conflict, humanity's cohesion, unity, and ingenuity shone brighter than any weapon or technology, proving that the defiance they exhibited was not reckless rebellion but deliberate, calculated, and unstoppable assertion of power and influence. And as the stars themselves bore witness to the unfolding human campaign, Alien, leaders across the galaxy could only watch in disbelief, realizing that their centuries of assumptions, arrogance, and underestimation had created a threat that no strategy, no fleet, and no alliance could easily contain. And as Captain Rios prepared the next phase of operations, which would strike at the logistical heart of the Drellan Empire and force them into irreversible strategic retreat, she understood fully that humanity had not merely survived the galaxy's indifference and hostility. They had redefined the rules of engagement, demonstrating that intelligence, unity, and moral conviction could not only resist but dominate, and that defying the galaxy was not an act of vengeance or chaos but a deliberate, unstoppable assertion of humanity's rightful place among the stars. The human offensive had now reached a stage that even the most seasoned alien strategists could not fully comprehend, as Terran fleets moved with a combination of precision, intuition, and technological superiority that made conventional battle plans obsolete. And while the Drellans and their allies struggled to maintain control, human operatives executed covert missions that disrupted supply lines, sabotaged hypergate networks, and liberated populations with a level of coordination that blurred the line between military operations and diplomatic outreach, and each successful mission not only crippled enemy capacity but also strengthened the perception of humans as both protectors and invincible tacticians. While in orbital command centers across human-controlled sectors, engineers worked tirelessly to integrate newly captured alien technologies, enhancing fleet capabilities, refining energy systems, and creating weapons that were optimized for precision rather than destruction. And on the front lines, pilots executed maneuvers that seemed almost prescient, anticipating enemy movements, exploiting weaknesses in ship design, and coordinating strikes across multiple systems in real time, demonstrating a combination of training, experience, and intuitive understanding that alien species had never witnessed, while Captain Elena Rios, coordinating from a vanguard, oversaw simultaneous campaigns that spanned sectors and light years, each operation building upon the last two, systematically dismantled the Drellan Empire's military, political, and logistical frameworks, and as humans liberated entire planets, installing governance structures that promoted stability and protection, the galaxy began to perceive humanity not as a chaotic threat, but as a disciplined, moral, and strategic power capable of reshaping the cosmic balance. And while some alien empires attempted to intervene or negotiate, they found themselves caught in webs of human diplomacy that leveraged alliances, intelligence, and force in equal measure, forcing reluctant powers to align with humanity or risk isolation and retaliation. And as the Drellan Command struggled to regroup, their fleets fragmented, supply chains collapsed, and morale plummeted. While within the Terran scientific networks, breakthrough technologies emerged that bent conventional physics, allowing humans to create stealth capabilities, adaptive shields, and hyper-accelerated computational systems that provided battlefield awareness and control previously thought impossible. And the psychological effect on the galaxy was profound. As species once oppressed now witnessed humans acting not out of greed or conquest but out of protection, strategy, and moral determination, demonstrating that power combined with ethical conduct could achieve results unmatched by pure aggression. And as smaller empires pledged allegiance, contributed intelligence, and integrated their resources into the human-led coalition, the scale and efficiency of Terran operations multiplied exponentially, creating a force that dwarfed expectations and destabilized centuries-old power structures. While back on Earth, the Terran Council monitored these developments with a balance of pride and solemnity, understanding that humanity had entered a new era, where its influence extended far beyond planetary defense into the strategic shaping of galactic order. And amid this, Captain Rios prepared a bold maneuver to strike at the heart of the Drellan Empire's logistics hub, a critical nexus that, if neutralized, would force the remaining fleets into disarray and cripple their operational capacity, while human intelligence operatives had already infiltrated key command nodes, providing live updates that allowed Terran fleets to anticipate every potential counterattack. And as the first salvos of this operation commenced, alien leaders could only stare in disbelief at the systematic dismantling of their empire, realizing that humanity's defiance was no accident, no random act of resistance, but a deliberate, unstoppable assertion of capability, ingenuity, and moral authority. And as the battles raged across hyperspace corridors and planetary systems, human forces demonstrated an uncanny ability to adapt, evolve, and overcome every obstacle, leveraging alliances, technology, and strategy to transform potential defeats into victories, while the galaxy watched in awe and fear as the underestimated species had not only survived the hostility of empires, but had rewritten the rules of engagement, proving that defiance, intelligence, and unity were more powerful than any fleet, weapon, or political maneuver. And in the command hub of the Vanguard, Elena Rios reflected on the scope of humanity's achievement, understanding that the galaxy would never again dismiss Earth, that the era of underestimation was over, and that the true power of humans lay not merely in technology or strategy, but in the unyielding will to act, the ability to inspire allies, and the moral clarity to wield their capabilities responsibly. And as the stars bore witness to this unprecedented campaign, one thing became undeniable. Humanity had not only defied the galaxy, but had irrevocably reshaped it, and no empire would ever again underestimate the quiet, relentless force that had emerged from a small blue planet on the edge of the Milky Way. As the campaign entered its penultimate phase, humanity's momentum showed no sign of slowing, with fleets moving through contested sectors with a coordination that alien commanders could scarcely comprehend, while Terran scientists and engineers continued to push the boundaries of technology, integrating alien systems, developing adaptive energy grids, and creating hyper-advanced weaponry that allowed precise, devastating strikes without unnecessary collateral damage. And across liberated worlds, humans established governance and defense networks, not as conquerors but as protectors, demonstrating that their power was guided by strategy, ethics, and foresight, while Captain Elena Rios, aboard the flagship Vanguard, orchestrated simultaneous operations across multiple star systems, her commands delivered with calm precision, each order anticipating the enemy's reaction, exploiting weaknesses, and maximizing strategic impact. And the Drellan leadership, once confident in their superiority, now faced a collapsing empire, their fleets fragmented, supply lines severed, and morale shattered, as human pilots executed near-impossible maneuvers, combining intuition, skill, and technological enhancements to neutralize overwhelming odds, while covert operatives infiltrated key command centers, disrupting communications, sabotaging resources, and turning the galaxy's most secure systems into liability for the enemy. And as intelligence from allied minor species flowed in, humanity adapted in real time, countering every attempt at retaliation, while demonstrating a level of precision and discipline that reshaped the expectations of what a species could achieve. And as entire planetary systems were liberated, the Terran coalition expanded, gaining new allies and resources, amplifying their reach and power while further destabilizing Drellan control. And in the political sphere, human diplomats leveraged these victories to negotiate treaties, secure cooperation, and neutralize potential threats before they could materialize, showing that defiance could be paired with strategy, morality, and long-term vision, while alien scientists and engineers struggled to understand how humans had integrated adaptive technologies, predictive algorithms, and battlefield ingenuity into a seamless war machine that operated across light years with almost prescient efficiency. And as fleets converged on the Drellan capital, the combined impact of strategic strikes, planetary uprisings, and technological superiority left enemy forces in total disarray, their command structure decimated and their empire teetering on the brink of collapse, while human soldiers and operatives, guided by experience, training, and purpose, executed their missions with precision, liberating key positions, protecting civilians, and demonstrating a combination of tactical brilliance and moral responsibility that left alien observers in awe and fear. And as a Terran command monitored the final stage of the campaign, analyzing hyperlane activity, fleet movements, and planetary defenses, it became clear that humanity's defiance had evolved into an unstoppable assertion of galactic power, intelligence, and influence, and that their campaign was not merely a response to aggression but a transformative force, reshaping alliances, power dynamics, and the perception of humans across the stars. While the Drellans, once proud and unchallenged, watched helplessly as every assumption, every strategic plan, and every advantage they had relied upon crumbled, revealing the full scope of human ingenuity, resilience, and strategic genius. And as a final coordinated attack struck the heart of Drellan command and supply networks, alien fleets were systematically neutralized, entire worlds liberated, and communications brought under human control. leaving the galaxy in awe of a species that had not only survived centuries of underestimation, but had risen to challenge empires, liberate oppressed populations, and demonstrate that defiance, intelligence, unity, and moral clarity were forces more formidable than any weapon or technology. And within the vanguard, Elena Rios reflected on the immense scope of humanity's achievement, understanding that this campaign will be remembered not as a war but as the dawn of a new galactic order, where humans, once underestimated, had established themselves as a species capable of shaping the future of countless worlds, and that the galaxy would never again ignore the quiet, relentless force that had emerged from a small, blue planet on the edge of the Milky Way, proving that true power lay not merely in fleets, weapons, or technology, but in the ability to combine strategy, courage, innovation, and moral purpose into an unstoppable force of defiance and transformation. And as the stars themselves bore witness to this unprecedented campaign, it became clear that humanity's place in the galaxy had been irrevocably changed, and that no empire, no council, and no fleet could ever again underestimate the species that had redefined what it meant to survive, resist, and triumph among the stars. The final phase of humanity's campaign unfolded with a precision and intensity that no alien empire could withstand, as Terran fleets converged on the Drellin capital and critical command hubs, executing coordinated strikes that simultaneously dismantled military assets, severed communication lines, and liberated oppressed worlds, while human operatives infiltrated key installations to ensure that victory would be absolute and sustainable. And as the Drellin leadership faced the undeniable collapse of their empire, panic and disbelief swept through their ranks, for every contingency they had prepared was anticipated, every plan counted, every advantage nullified by the combination of human ingenuity, discipline, and moral clarity. And yet, humanity's approach was not one of mindless vengeance, but of deliberate precision, rescuing civilians, protecting allies, and establishing order even amidst the chaos of war, demonstrating a level of strategic and ethical sophistication that left the galaxy in awe, while Captain Elena Rios coordinated the final operations from the vanguard with a calm focus, guiding fleets, operatives, and allies across systems, ensuring that the collapse of enemy forces was complete yet controlled, and that the human presence would serve as both protector and stabilizer. And as the Drellin command finally issued surrender directives, alien leaders were forced to acknowledge a truth that had been long ignored. The species they had dismissed as primitive, weak, and inconsequential had not only survived the aggression of empires, but had risen to demonstrate unparalleled strategic brilliance, technological mastery, and moral authority, while the liberated world celebrated their freedom and pledged allegiance to the human coalition, recognizing that humanity's combination of power, wisdom, and ethics made them an unsurpassed force in the galaxy. And throughout the Terran-controlled sectors, scientists and engineers continued to refine and adapt technology, not for conquest but for protection and stability, ensuring that humanity's rise will be sustained, resilient, and respected across countless star systems, while political leaders coordinated governance, alliances, and reconstruction efforts to solidify humanity's influence and reassure the galaxy that their intent was justice and order, not domination. And as news of the final victories reached distant empires, fear, awe, and reluctant admiration spread as alien civilizations finally grasped the scope of the miscalculation they had made in underestimating humans. The species they had assumed would be easily subdued, now revealed as capable of outmaneuvering, outthinking, and outlasting the galaxy's most formidable powers. And in the quiet moments following the culmination of the campaign, Captain Rios and her officers reflected on the enormity of what had been achieved, recognizing that humanity's defiance had not only toppled empires but also redefined the galaxy's understanding of power, resilience, and morality. For the humans had demonstrated that true strength was not measured solely by fleets or weapons, but by ingenuity, unity, courage, and the unwavering commitment to protect and uplift others while asserting one's rightful place. And as the stars stretched endlessly beyond the vanguard's observation decks, the galaxy witnessed a transformation, an irreversible shift in the balance of power, perception, and expectation. And every empire, every council, and every species came to understand that the era of dismissing humanity was over, that the quiet, relentless species from a small blue planet had not only survived countless threats, but had emerged as a defining force of the galaxy, and that their defiance had become the standard by which all others would be measured, proving once and for all that the underestimated could rise, the oppressed could triumph, and a species driven by strategy, morality, and unyielding determination could reshape the cosmos itself, leaving a legacy that would echo across the stars for generations. And as Captain Rios gazed at the distant constellations, she understood that humanity had achieved more than victory. They had awakened the galaxy to the truth of their potential, and in doing so, ensure that no civilization would ever again underestimate the quiet power, relentless ingenuity, and unstoppable spirit of humanity.